Oh, sorry about that, everyone. I was still on mute. So, welcome. We are so excited to have you all with us this morning for a very special program, a reading of Tata, the Tataviam Toei with Alan Salazar. To view the closed captions in English and Spanish of this event, please click on the external link that we have dropped in the chat. For our guests watching on YouTube, the link to the closed captions in English and in Spanish is in the video description below. My name is Maggie, and I work with the education team at the Natural History Museums of Los Angeles County. We have 3 museums in our family, and today we are coming to you from the William S. Hart Museum. I'm also joined by a very special guest who we'll learn more about in just a moment. But I would like to thank my helpers from our own team. We have Cassie, Jessica, Jules, Julie, and Rachel all here to help us, assisting behind the scenes. So thank you so much, team, for being here. Also, today's program was made possible through the work of our wonderful partners from the Education and Cultural Learning Department of the Fernandeño Tataviam Band of Mission Indians. So a special thanks to Janae, Natasha, and Candido for making this program possible today. We'll be together for about 40 minutes. After our guest is done sharing, we are going to answer some of your questions about the presentation. Now, this might be a different format of Zoom than what many of our students are used to. So you won't see any of your classmates or your teacher or any of the other people watching this program today. And we can't see or hear you. You'll only be able to see and hear us. Since we actually can't see one another, I do want to take a moment to shout out to the students joining us from all of today's schools. Thank you so much for being here, everyone. And since we can't see one another, we'll use the chat box to ask questions. During the presentation, our friends watching on Zoom can click on the chat to type in a question, and we'll try to answer it at the end of the presentation. Now, your chat might look different depending on what device you're using, but you can look for an icon like the one pictured on the slide to open it up. Type in your question directly into the chat for us to see. Your question will only be seen by the museum staff who are running the Zoom call right now. The chat is currently closed, but we will open it up during the presentation. Now, we do ask that all of our friends joining us today only put questions or comments related to the presentation in the chat. This helps us make sure that we can get through as many questions as possible today. And out of respect for our panelists and for our staff assisting with the program, we ask that everyone uses appropriate language in the chat. Folks not following our code of conduct may be asked to leave today's program. Now, we will try to get to as many questions as we can, but with hundreds of students joining us today, we probably won't have time for all of them. In case we don't get to answer your question today, I encourage you to keep something to write with nearby so you can record your ideas and learn more about what we're sharing today on your own. So if you'd like to grab a piece of paper and a pencil so you can record your experience while you're watching, you can draw things that are shown by today's guests, note down any of the questions that you have learned, and maybe a few facts too. And as we start today's program, I just want to take a moment to recognize and acknowledge the first people of the land that I am joining you from today. So right now, I am in my apartment, and that is located on the ancestral territory of Siutkanga, so near the place that we call Encino today. Now, I work at the William S. Hart Museum, which is in New Hall, California, and that occupies the ancestral and unceded territory of Tochananga. I would like to honor the elders of these places, both past and present, as well as the descendants who are citizens of the Fernandeño Tataviam Band of Mission Indians. I recognize that the tribe is still here, and we all are committed to lifting up their stories, culture, and community. Now, some of you might be wondering whose land you're joining us from today. For those of you who live in northern Los Angeles County, the area that you see on this map, you are joining us from Tataviam, which is the Fernandeño Tataviam word for traditional Tataviam territory. Some of you may be joining us from the traditional homelands of the Tongva, like my colleagues at the Natural History Museum or the La Brea Tar Pits, or even from the traditional homelands of the Chumash, or maybe somewhere else entirely. If you want to know whose land you are on right now, I encourage you to try to find out. And we're going to share in the chat a few resources that can help you do just that. Now, I am very excited to introduce you all to our special guest today, Mr. Alan Salazar. Mr. Alan is a traditional storyteller, author, native educator, and tribal elder in both the Fernandeño Tataviam and the Ventureño Chumash tribal nations. When he's not telling stories, Mr. Alan works very hard to preserve his cultural traditions and protect land and environment of his ancestors' homelands, where he still lives today. So without further ado, I'd like to turn things over to you, Mr. Alan.
Thank you. Hamanat Netawan Alan Salazar, Pasefa Nukasin, Chikoyanga, Tapu Nukasin. Hello, I'm Alan Salazar. My indigenous ancestors come from the villages of Chikoyanga, which is where Magic Mountain is, and it's Tataviam, and the village of Tapu, which is Ventureño Chumash in Simi Valley. And I was born in the village of Pasefa, which is San Fernando, California. A little brief background about myself. I get my Tataviam Chumash ancestry from my father's side of the family, and my ancestors on my father's side of the family were brought to the San Fernando mission starting in 1799. My great-grandfather, Antonio Maria Ortega, I have a picture of him. That's Antonio right there. My great-grandfather was born in 1849. He was born at a time when someone could have killed my great-grandfather and they wouldn't have been sent to jail or to prison. They would have been paid a bounty. He survived one of the most dangerous times for California Indians, and many tribes went extinct, were killed off, and the Tataviam and Chumash were this close to extinction. But we are still here. We're a vibrant, strong culture and tribe. We're bringing back our languages, our traditional songs. And as a storyteller, I realized that there aren't very many Tataviam stories that were saved. The Chumash are a very large tribe. They go from Malibu in the south all the ways up the coast to Morro Bay and to Paso Robles inland, almost to the San Joaquin Valley. And if you've been to Bakersfield, you know why we didn't go into the San Joaquin Valley. So the Tataviam, many anthropologists and historians interviewed them and wrote down their stories in their language and some of their songs. So the Chumash culture has been saved much more than the Tataviam culture. So what I started doing was writing stories in the spirit of my Tataviam ancestors. How did we live? What did we believe in? When I go to schools, and all the schools out there, please invite me. And I'm training my nephew and one of my second cousins, two nice young men, to do what I'm doing, and I'm going to pass it on to the next generation. But the Tataviam were a very small tribe. Santa Clarita Valley is the center of our territory, and we were, and still are hunters, gatherers, and business people. We were entrepreneurs, and we have been for thousands and thousands of years. And this is what I mean by that. When you look at where the Tataviam live, south of the Tataviam, or the Tongva Gabrielino in the Los Angeles Basin, they're a very large tribe, much larger than us. So we were very diplomatic and would negotiate and develop business relationships. So we can go and hunt and gather in their territory, and we would trade what we had in abundance with things that they didn't have. The Chumash also are a much larger tribe, and we would trade and develop relationships with them. The Kirinumuk and the Yoka tribes in the San Joaquin Valley, the same thing. The Serrano out in the desert. We developed relationships, business relationships, and traded with all those tribes. And all of our highways today that we travel on today, many of them are from old Indian trails. And I'll give you a couple examples. If you were to go do an archaeological dig with archaeologists or scientists that study tribes and cultures and things like that, and they'll do a dig where they're looking for artifacts that have been buried below ground that have not been disturbed for thousands of years. And when they do archaeological digs in Tataviam territory, they will find chert arrowheads. So this is chert. It's a waxy-like, shiny stone. You can get a pretty sharp edge. And you will find chert in our village sites. But you will also find obsidian, which is much sharper, and you can get a sharper edge with obsidian. But we have no obsidian in Chumash territory. You will also find abalone. In all of our villages, you will find abalone shells, abalone fishing hooks, and jewelry and things like that. There's no abalone in the Santa Clara River. These items, the shells, the obsidian, were traded in, and then we traded the obsidian that we got from the desert tribes going out towards Lancaster, past Lancaster, even past Mojave, going towards Ridgecrest and Lone Pine and Mammoth. We would trade that obsidian to the Tonga Gabrielino. We would trade that obsidian to the Chumash. We would trade the abalone to the Yoka Valley, the Yoka tribes in the San Joaquin Valley. That they would then allow us to hunt their Tule elk. Tule are big from the deer family, but they're twice as big as deer. Their hides are twice as thick. They will keep you twice as warm. Then we would trade those hides to the Chumash. We were business people. We hunted, we gathered, and we were business people, and we have been for thousands of years. And that's how I've wrote my stories, in the spirit of my ancestors. Let me do something here. I'm not sure if I'm... There we go. Now I can see myself. The first story I want to share with you is a story I wrote a couple years ago. It's about a Toei. It's about a California Toei, but since this Toei, Tata, was born in Tataviam territory, hence the title, Tata, the Tataviam Toei. Toeis are a small little bird, a little bit bigger than a sparrow, a little bit smaller than a robin. I became fascinated with them working on an archaeological site, an ancient village site in the Simi Valley, and I saw these little birds hopping and running and very rarely flying, and I would ask the biologists and the Audubon Society birds people, what's that little bird? Tell them why don't they fly very much? And I learned very quickly that they eat seeds and bugs and insects, and they stay in the brush for protection, and that's where they build their nests. And they're just a cute little bird, and when they hop, it's just the cutest thing you'll ever see. When they run, it's just the cutest thing. And this is the story of Tata, the Tataviam Toei. Once there was a young Tataviam Toei bird. His name was Tata. When Tata was young, his parents taught him how to hop and run from chaparral brush to chaparral brush, and where to find the best seeds and the juiciest bugs. Tata's parents also taught him how to fly. They told him over and over, Tata, never fly high above the chaparral and never fly above the trees. Why? Asked Tata. Tata's pop said, there are giant killer birds, hawks, falcons, and eagles that will eat you. They are fast, they are strong, and they have sharp, sharp talons. Now, Tata was already 5 weeks old, which made him a teenager. And like most teenagers, he thought his parents were just trying to scare him. His parents seemed to be telling him the truth. But like most teenagers, he wanted to see these giant killer birds with his own eyes. So he landed at the top of the coyote brush, and he looked to the left, he looked to the right, and he didn't see any giant killer hawks, falcons, or eagles. He saw nothing. So then he flew to the top of an elderberry tree, about 25 feet high. And he looked to the left, he looked to the right, he looked all around, and he didn't see any of those killer hawks, falcons, or eagles. He saw nothing. Then he flew to the top of the grandfather oak tree, a very large oak tree, and he looked to his left, he looked to his right, and he didn't see any giant killer hawks, falcons, or eagles. And he was at the very top of this oak tree, 60 feet high, higher than he'd ever flown before. And just about then, his friend Juan the Sparrow flew up to the top of the tree with Tata, and the sparrow said, "What are you doing way up here, my friend?" And Tata explained about the giant killer birds his parents had warned him about, and that he wanted to see them for himself. Tata said, "I looked all around, and I did not see any giant killer birds." At that moment, Juan the Sparrow said, "Look up, my friend." And circling high above the two little birds was a giant red-tailed hawk. And Tata, the Tataviam Toei, when he saw the giant red-tailed hawk circling above him, he got scared because that red-tailed hawk tucked its wings and dove down towards those two little birds. The two friends hopped into the center of the oak tree for protection, but the red-tailed hawk was not after the two small birds. He was diving for a rattlesnake. Tata was scared. He said to his friend, "That giant killer hawk, he just caught a rattlesnake." A rattlesnake! Holy moly! My parents were telling me the truth. Juan said, "My parents told me the same thing. Maybe we should listen to him more closely." The two birds looked at each other, and then you know what they did? They started to laugh and laugh and laugh and laugh because they knew they weren't going to listen to their parents any more closely. But after seeing that giant killer red-tailed hawk, the young birds did listen to their parents a little bit more closely. They just acted like they didn't, because even a Tataviam Toei can roll his eyes. So those of you out there that are 9, 10, you have about 3-4 years to practice rolling your eyes, because that's what all teenagers do. We're very proud of the book, and I usually talk a little bit about the history and everything, but Mona Lewis, this beautiful woman right here, she's my girlfriend, did all the illustrations. And it's one of the things that is very unique about all these beautiful drawings and paintings that she did. They're all done the way tribal people made paint for thousands of years. She gets stones, or I actually went out and collected most of these ochres, these soft stones, and then she pounds them and grinds them and makes her own paint. And all these paints she made herself, the way Tataviam people made paints. There's explanations of how the paints are made, how you can make black paint from charcoal and how to make the charcoal. There's how to draw a Toei step by step. So even if you're artistically challenged like moi, you can still learn how to draw a Toei. And then we added some pages to color. And I usually talk a little bit more about the book, but I have a special treat. All of you are the first ones to see our second book, A Tataviam Creation Story. Once again, it's an original story because we don't have too many Tataviam stories. and I'm going to try my best. I'm not very good at this. Our language is pretty much lost, and we're trying to relearn it. But the book, my new book that I just got right now from UPS or FedEx, whoever it was, and knocked on the door and left the book about an hour ago. It starts with these three phrases. Tata vi a vokiki cha wankam kach. The Tataviam had clans. Ye na mo chenyo na tav onini yum. The animals were our teachers. Ye na mo biyokum ki na mo takta mi chokin. The animals gathered and they made the people. Long, long ago, there were no people in the Tataviam territory. For thousands and thousands of years, only the animals and plants lived in the Tataviam territory. In those days, the animals had a great council, the Tataviam Council of Animals. This council consisted of bear, eagle, deer, lizard, turtle, raven, spider, and coyote. It was the first meeting of the year, the first day of spring. The council met at a sacred cave in the mountains just north of the Santa Clara River. It is known today as Bower Cave. Once again, all these beautiful illustrations were done with natural pigments by Mona Lewis. Bear had just awakened from his winter sleep. During his hibernation, he had had a dream. He dreamed of a new creature that stood and walked on two legs. Bear had heard from his cousins who lived way up north that there were creatures the polar bears called people. The bear knew he was dreaming of the Tataviam people, and Bear called the council of animals together to decide what the Tataviam people would look like and how they would survive. That young man right there, that Tataviam young man, that's me at age 15. Each member of the council wanted the Tataviam people to look like them. Coyote was especially proud of his appearance. He thought his eyes, his ears, even his tail would look great on the Tataviam people. Coyote argued with all the other animals about everything. This great debate went on and on and on. Eagle said since the Tataviam people will stand on two legs, their feet are very important. Spider said maybe the Tataviam should have 4 feet and 4 hands. All the animals said no at the same time. But Eagle knew who had the best feet. Eagle asked Bear to show everyone his feet. When the others saw Bear's feet, they all agreed the Tataviam should have feet like Bear. Well, everyone except Coyote. Coyote said the Tataviam people should have yellow eyes like mine. This is a young granddaughter of Kathy Flores, one of our tribal elders. They're from the Ortiz lineage. Lizard agreed, because lizards have yellow eyes. That's my grandson, Caden, there. But all the other animals thought brown eyes like deer's were better. Well, everyone except Coyote. Then Coyote said the Tataviam people should have a tail like mine. There's the deer. That's Ben Cook, one of my cousins from the Cook Garcia lineage. Turtle said, no, a tail like mine. Bear stood up and said, no, the Tataviam people should not have any tail. We have to keep some things so we will be special. All the animals agreed. Well, everyone except Coyote. Then Turtle stood up as tall as she could and said, what about color? Coyote jumped up and said, the Tataviam people should have a little grayish, a little reddish, some tan, maybe a little beige, a little white and black scattered about. And Turtle said, so, Coyote, you want them to have your colors? I think they should be just one color. Turtle slowly looked at all the animals very carefully. slowly checking everyone's fur, feathers, and scale. Turtle looked at everything, the plants, the sky, the ground they all stood on. He looked at everything. Hold on, this is a big moment. After a moment of thought, Turtle said, "The brown color of Mother Earth is so beautiful, I think the Tataviam people should be brown. We all come from Mother Earth, and so do the Tataviam people." And all the animals agreed. Well, everyone except Coyote. After several days and several nights, the Tataviam Council animals had decided on everything about the Tataviam people. This is what we would look like. The animals were all very happy. Well, everyone except Coyote. Deer said, "Our work is done here. May we go home?" But Raven, who sat quietly, hadn't said a single word, cawed and cawed as loud as he could and got everyone's attention. Raven had sat quietly during the whole meeting, and he said the Tataviam people should also have something else from all the animals. Bear, with a confused look, said, "What are you talking about, Raven? We've decided on everything about the Tataviam people." Raven cawed and cawed again really loud. All of us have our own gift, our own power, our own spirit. We are all teachers. We teach our young how to survive. We teach how to hunt in a good way. We teach how to gather plants in a respectful way. We teach which plants are for food and which are for medicine and which are poison. I think the Tataviam people should have the gifts, the powers, and the spirits of us. Some of the Tataviam people will have raven spirit. Some will have bear spirit. Some will have eagle spirit. Some lizard spirit. Some turtle spirit. Some deer spirit. Some spider spirit. And most importantly, some will have coyote spirit. That beautiful young woman there with the eagle above her, that's my Aunt Beverly as a young woman. Raven continued, the Tataviam people will be fast, slow, tall, short, fierce, timid, beautiful, playful, strong, and clever. Clever like me, dude? Asked Coyote. It was Coyote that started the dude thing, by the way. Yes, clever like you, Coyote, said Raven. And all the animals agreed, even Coyote. Now you know who created the Tataviam people and why we still respect all the animals. They are teachers. We can learn from all of them. Every one of us has our own gift, our own power, and our own spirit. And we are all connected to Mother Earth. We all need each other to survive. Some believe that the first Tataviam people were over 20 feet tall. But that's another story for another day. The end. The very first reading and telling of my Tataviam creation story, illustrations by Mona Lewis. You can get both books at www.sunspritehandwork.com. We have Tata right now, and the creation story books will be here in hopefully about 3 to 4 weeks, but definitely before Christmas. So let me open it up for Q&A. I think I kept it within my time limit there and got in 2 stories and an extra story. And I'm going to type in, they got the Handsprite thing in. Yes. So whoever's going to host, Maggie, if you want to ask me a few questions, ask away, my dear.
Will do. So throughout this time, we've been looking through the chat and pulling some of your questions. We're going to do our best to get through as many of them. But thank you so much, Mr. Allen, for letting us hear the first read through of your next story. We were getting questions throughout the program if you had more stories and more books. So I'm glad you answered that one for us. And somebody wanted to know, Richard and Dua from Roland Elementary, I hope I'm saying your names right. They wanted to know how long it took to write a book.
I've been a storyteller actually, I think all my life. And when I was a young boy, I enjoyed listening to other people tell stories. I was fortunate enough as a little boy to live in Hanford, California, where my mom is from, and we lived kind of in the country and had a couple acres with horses. And there was two widow ladies, and I would go to their house when I was little. When I was 4, 5, 6 years old, I'd go to their house and I'd stay there for hours and hours. One, because they both, Mrs. Harper and Mrs. Taylor, were excellent bakers. So I would go there for the chocolate chip cookies and the fresh apple pies. But then I would listen to them tell stories. So I just was always fascinated with stories. My pop was a storyteller, was a Marine, fought in World War II, and my book Tata is dedicated to my pop. And the dedication says, I was with my pop many times, and he would turn to me and say, "Have I ever told you the story about the time Joe Barron and I went deer hunting?" And I'd say, "Yes, Pop, you've told me that story a dozen times." And he would say, "Well, it was a cold, foggy day that morning, and we left before the sun came up at 4 a.m. to get to a good hunting spot." And I enjoyed the story the 13th time as much as I did the first time. So some stories come to me quickly, and I can come up with a story within a matter of a couple hours and working on it. But usually my method of stories, I'll come up with an idea. Why don't Toei birds fly real high? What would the Toei birds be saying to each other if one of them decided to fly up to the top of an oak tree? And then I put it away, and I come back to it, and I start adding onto the story and expanding and changing a little here, adding here, subtracting there. So it's kind of a process. So it could take anywhere from a day to a couple months, because lots of times I like to set a story away and then come back and work on it again. But thank you for that question. That's a good one.
Awesome. Thank you for answering that for us. Okay, we have another question from Alex, who was wondering, or said one of our students is wondering if these stories are true.
I enjoy telling other tribal stories. For example, there's a story, a Pomo story, how Coyote saved the Pomo Indians, that they had a great drought, and the lake that the Pomo Indians used to live around, which is a giant lake, Clear Lake, started to shrink and shrink and shrink and get smaller and smaller. And eventually the whole lake was gone, it dried up. And no matter what the Pomo Indians did, they couldn't get it to rain. It was Coyote that saved the Pomo Indians, and the story kind of goes on. About 900 years ago, there was a great drought in California, and it lasted, they believe, for over 20 years, and many lakes dried up, and rivers turned into little streams at best. So lots of times there's a truth in the story, and then you take on and expound on it. Did Coyote start the phrase dude? I don't know, but coyotes are very clever and very intelligent. They kind of are mischievous. They do silly things. If any animal would start using the phrase dude, Coyote would be one of the ones that would possibly do that. But I like to say there's usually a truth in traditional myth and legend, and then a little bit of embellishment. And you're going to have to look up the word embellishment, because I only went to junior college, so I'm not sure what it means.
Well, thank you so much. I think you did a great job explaining that for all of us. I wanted to ask a question that's from the UCLA Lab School, which they were wondering why there are no pumas in the Animal Council.
You know, and I've been involved with the Wildlife Bridge and Wildlife Corridor, and I'm extremely proud that they're going to incorporate one of my suggestions. So the Wildlife Bridge that they're going to build over Highway 101 at Liberty Canyon. They're going to incorporate over the bridge where it looks like a rainbow, either on the fencing or the bridge. They'll put some rainbow colors. And that's in honor of the Rainbow Bridge story, which is a Chumash creation story, and talks about how when the island of Limu, Santa Cruz Island, became too crowded and there was too many Chumash people on it, that Hutash, the Mother Earth Spirit, built the Rainbow Bridge so the people could safely cross over that channel. So when you go from the mainland out to any of the islands, that channel, that ocean between the mainland and the islands is very dangerous. Just like for animals to try and cross 101 is very dangerous. So I thought about adding, and I thought, you know, I don't want to just add mountain lion or cougar or puma to the story just to bring attention to that. Someone asked the first question about how long does it take to write a story. I have an idea for a mountain lion story, and I have a couple different directions that I might go with the story, and that will be a future book. So a little tease there.
Thank you so much. So we have a few other questions, lots of questions wondering more about the Tataviam tribe. Cooper wanted to know, how old is the Tataviam culture?
The Tataviam people, we believe we've been here for tens of thousands of years. And that's a fascinating question in that right now, literally right now, there's a big debate that did indigenous people come across the Bering Straits when it was a solid landmass, and then when the ice melted enough over Canada and the northern part of America, there was a small corridor, literally just miles wide, and I'm not sure if it was 30, 40 miles wide or 100 miles wide, but not a big thing. And they came down this melted ice trail, and then settled in California and across America and down into Mexico and New Mexico. But now there's a theory that, and there's been for a while, that we came from Polynesian or Eastern Asian maritime cultures, and they sailed over here. And the reason for that is that they're finding sites, archaeologists, and they're doing carbon dating testing, and they're finding animal bone that it looks like it was hunted, that is 15, 16, 17,000 years old, and 15,000, 17,000 years ago, from Alaska to Canada to most of North America, it was solid ice. So we couldn't have came over that solid ice thing. And there's some evidence that we might have came from Eastern Asian cultures via sailboats. So the Tataviam, we think we're part of that original peoples that came 10, 15, 20,000, however long ago it was. Archaeologists who I don't always agree with believe that we came here around 2,500 to 3,000 years ago, and that we broke away from one of those neighboring tribes, either the Serrano out in the desert or the Gabrielino from south of us, and we settled in the Santa Clarita Valley. I do believe that theory a little bit, in that I hate the desert. I hate going out to Lancaster and Palmdale. I used to hate going to Mojave and Ridgecrest when I lived in Bakersfield. So the theory that we were part of the Serrano tribe who live in the Mojave Desert and broke away from them, that can make a little sense. That 3,000 years ago, some of my ancestors said, I don't know about you dudes, but I'm tired of this hot wind, and then all of a sudden it gets cold and it snows, and then it rains like heck, and everything floods. Let's go over the mountains there. There's a nice little river in this valley over here, and we settled along the Santa Clara River. But we've been here for a long time.
Thank you for that. And we have other questions too about the tribe. Actually, a lot of our students are curious about your grandfather that you mentioned. Robin, as well as some of our friends from the Willows Community School, were concerned about your grandfather and other members of your tribe and wanted to ask if you can tell us more about your family members, your grandfather, and also how your tribe survived.
We were close to extinction. My understanding is in 1900, there was the 1900 census. And in the 1900 census, all we can find are 24 people that identify as Tataviam. So a tribe that had 5,000-6,000 people prior to European contact, and by 1900 was down to less than 30. There were probably a few more out there that maybe just weren't identifying, but we were close to extinction. My family and my theory is one thing that we know about our great-great-grandparents, our great-great-great-grandparents, my great-grandfather Antonio Maria Ortega, is that they were all very hard workers and very highly skilled workers. So we think possibly what probably happened was they were more valuable alive than for a $5, $10, $20 bounty. And we were, for generations, basically enslaved laborers. So California Indians that worked at the missions and built the missions like my ancestors, then worked at the rancherias, and then worked for early California settlers. They were very rarely paid. They weren't ever given money. Their pay was them being allowed to live and them having shelter, a small house on that ranch or farm to live on. So they were able to, have some food from the ranch and the farm and house, but they weren't paid money. We were basically slaves. But we know that there was a great-grandfather that was a cart maker. My great-great-great-grandfather, Francisco, was part of a land grant for a square league of land. It was given to him and 2 or 3 other indigenous men from the San Fernando mission, and was quickly taken away from them. What the Spanish and Mexican politicians would do whenever they discovered that the mission priests had given some land to some of the Indian people because we built their mission and we were loyal, good Catholics and good workers, they would give us land, but then the Spanish and Mexican politicians would start taxing them, knowing that we had no money. And they'd say, you have this tax, this fee, this tax, this tax. And they go, we have no money. They go, okay, we'll take the land. So a square league of land is 4,400 acres. It became the Rancho Encino and then became the town of Encino. And we lost that. But they needed us as workers. That's how we believe we survived.
Thank you, Mr. Allen. And we are right at time, but there is one last question if you can answer quickly. Some of our friends at the 3rd Street Elementary School were wondering how they can help spread awareness about the Tataviam tribe. If there's anything you'd like to share on that.
Yeah, and if someone could type this into the chat, please. We have a website, the Fernandeño Tataviam Band of Mission Indians. It has our tribal history. We are a federally non-recognized tribe, which means we don't get anything from the Bureau of Indian Affairs. We have no tribal land. So when Maggie said she's on unceded land, what that means is we have never signed any treaties with the U.S. government, and we have never sold our land. It was taken from us. It's unceded. To put it simply, we believe our land was stolen. So we don't have reservation land. We are trying to get fairly recognized. So if you go to our website, there'll be ways of how to support the tribe. And at the Fernandeño Tataviam Band of Mission Indians at our website, and you can either go into that website or just Google this also, Tataviam Land Conservancy. And our Tataviam Land Conservancy is a nonprofit. I'm one of the members on the board of directors of our Land Conservancy, and we're trying to get back land that is undeveloped, that hasn't been built on, that's still in its natural state, so we can preserve it as open space. Basically the way the Sierra Club does, the way the Santa Monica Mountain Conservancy does, and those sort of environmental protection land groups. That's what the Tataviam Land Conservancy is. And we're just starting, so if you go to that and ask your parents, or if start a fundraiser at your school, a couple dollars here and a couple dollars there, we have to pay insurance, try and promote ourselves and make pamphlets and things. So there's a lot of ways that you can help. But I'll close with this. Go to your local museums, go to the LA Museum of Natural History, go to the Hart Park Museum, and only buy books that are written by Native peoples. My dear friend Cindy Alvitri has wrote a book, and I was hoping that I would have gotten the mail, but my dear friend Ernestine DeSoto wrote a book 15 years ago, Sugar Bear. There are a few books out there written by indigenous people. Those are the books that you need to buy. Support Native writers, Native storytellers. When you buy Native art, make sure that it's made by Native artists, that it's not made in China. Not that I have anything against China. It's a nice country, I think. So that's. I'll get off my soapbox. Thank you. We're going a little bit over. All the schools. Contact our tribe. We'll gladly send out. We have several storytellers like myself and people that do educational programs, and I can bring all my artifacts and explain what a pestle is and what a mano is, and you can actually touch them and feel and hold them. So there's me, Dennis Garcia, my young nephew Dwayne Salazar is going to start doing them, and I hope Aaron Martin, my young cousin, is going to start doing educational programs at schools. Please contact us. That's how you can support us.
Yes, thank you so much, Mr. Salazar. And I'm very quickly going to share these last few slides so we can drop some final links in the chat if you're interested in buying Mr. Salazar's book, Tata, or the other one when it is posted. You can see his website right there. And then also, another book on the Tataviam Tribe's website also is a language book where you can read another story by Mr. Salazar there and learn more about the Tataviam tribe as well. The last links we're going to drop in is that to the tribe's website themselves, to the Education and Cultural Learning Department site, where any Indigenous students out here joining us, you can definitely visit their site and perhaps participate in some of their programming as well. And then the Land Conservancy's website is linked on the Tataviam Tribe's homepage as well. So I want to thank you all so much for joining us. Thank you for listening in. Please follow the Natural History Museums on our channels. And we hope you have a fantastic rest of your day. Bye, everyone.